Okay, I'll try that again. For the longest time, I think we have decided and been comfy with the ideation that democracies are run by qualified people. They're qualified by their age and their education and their intention and merit otherwise, not necessarily contained in the first three. That this particular democracy, the United States one, was founded some 250 years ago, and their guidelines were drawn up at the same time in the Constitution. Unfortunately, unflexible, though several of the founders thought the Constitution should be much more flexible, should be changeable and changed often, but it didn't turn out that way. What did happen simply was a withdrawal from monarchy. That's what became what we thought of as democracy. What freedom meant to English aristocracy, to the people of the Enlightenment, or the people who came from money, who did not till the earth or sweep the streets for a living. What freedom became freedom from the monarchy, freedom for them to be individuals. And by and large, this community who wrote a lot of the stuff that we all read and understand to be history, and who did what we understand to be great deeds, they were a single entity. They were all European men with money. That's a vital thing. But so the movement, we often imagine that in Julius Caesar, we've been led to imagine that the Brutus and Cassius and the Senate in general who assassinated Caesar were all, down-to-earth popular Democrats. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, they were much more elitist than Caesar himself in many ways. And in fact, that's probably why he was killed. But we have this myth, we have this idea, we have this democracy that every day in the news we talk about, and that the democracy has been threatened by Donald Trump. So anyway, the nation was to be run, this non-monarchy was to be run by a group of men, all men, and there were qualifications for being in this group. The great and the good, I think, was the hope, and we've certainly written them historically as the great and the good. George Washington, Madison, Jefferson, my guy Tom Paine, etc. That's what we have done with them. We had long millennia of this conception of our race, that some of us were suited to this task rather than that task. And I mean going back into the early civilizations, in the cradle of civilization, a long history of deciding and rewarding and ensuring that the best people got into the positions where they could be the most useful or the most powerful, depending on how you looked at it. We didn't come into the second half of the 18th century egalitarian. There had been tries in history up until then, and they all ended in awful bloodshed as the elites struck back. The group from which we chose our leaders were male, Caucasian, educated, and I'll not let education go. They were brought to be savvy in the ways of the old Euro world, to believe in and to honor its essential myth, which mythologized them. And finally, our candidate usually had some money, which was thought and still is thought to be evidence of merit. Slowly, this group has extended its membership to include other races and genders, and here we are. But just to be clear, once you enter that class, in my experience or my perception of it, once you enter this class, you enter this what they call the professional management class. You are educated to run things, to be managers, to all other words for ruling. There's a hierarchy even within the small democracies that operate within corporations, but they're still fundamentally CEO run. They have a leader. So then populism, a new word, not thought of as democracy, was always there since forever and ever, before it was an ism even. I think when Moses said, "Let my people go," or God said it through Moses, people were referred to the populace, that people's populism. In other words, let my people, the people were the led. They were the masses, they were the tribe, the farmers, the soldiers, the administrators, all that sort of stuff. And then you had this very gifted, charismatic leader called Moses. Moses led them out of Egypt. One feels that without him, they'd not have gone. He inspired and nurtured them through a long and terrible journey, eventually bringing them home. And a great archetypal story we still take to heart, a roadmap for community, and every 4 years we seek a Moses, let's say, and give him or her the rod of power. I always imagine Charlton Heston with his walking staff. Not exactly, but you know what I mean. Every now and then Jesus has one in pictures. Leaders, prophets, patriarchs. And we've gotten used to this. And I think we have said, well, enough of that. You know, we've got universal suffrage at last. So we've included women. We've included people who don't own property on any significant level beyond owning their car. People who rent, they are all allowed to participate. But I think that the essential imaginative conception of democracy remains, that it's that the masses, the people, the populace, the people who become populists actually they are campaigned for, and a great deal of work is done to allow them to go out and elect the better people to run their lives. And I don't think that we get screwed up with that. We don't think, oh, well, better people. We don't. But we do. We still have that notion operating. So, and I think that causes a lot of problems, and those problems are very evident now, and quite very destructive, because on some level, or from my perspective, populism is democracy. So that if you're a Kamala Harris voter and she doesn't win and the other party wins, if Donald Trump wins, we've been led to believe, and there may be some truth in it, I don't know or care. I don't care. But I've been led to believe that if they then become, if the 2025 thing gets ratified, if that is in fact what's going to happen, that our society will change. And in an essential democracy, that's like, yes, it will, and you must be large enough to live within it, okay? And vice versa. So if Bernie Sanders had won, good Lord, if Bernie Sanders had been allowed to run and had won, he would have turned this country, we think, into a much more sort of socialistic thing. And the rest of the people, the populace, the American community would have to say, yeah, this is okay, we can do this. And then wait for the next 4 years and 8 years or whatever it would be, and then say, well, that was a catastrophe, now let's go back to the other thing. I don't know. I just don't know. But that would be, in other words, a true democracy would be that all of us would be at the mercy and behest of what the largest number of people decided was good, the good. You go back to Socrates, and he's very concerned about the good, and he and his believed that the good were a select few, and that the state should be run by members of this few. My only thing, the enlightened prince or whatever you want to call it, my only thing is that in my lifetime, I've not seen any evidence that the members of that group from which we choose our leaders, I've not seen any evidence that they're actually any better than the southern Italian peasant. That's a Norman Finkelstein story. He says, if you are a young woman and you're lost somewhere, it doesn't really matter where, you're lost and you need food and you need shelter, who would you rather be found by, a southern Italian peasant or a Harvard law professor? That is the democratic question, right? And be honest in your answer on the evidence. I'm just saying on the evidence. And in my lifetime, to this point anyway, and more essentially at this point, I have found that the class of the qualified, it's not so much that I don't trust them, except that they don't trust themselves, that they have become, and maybe they always were, I don't know. I didn't live back then. I didn't know Thomas Paine. I didn't personally know somebody like Martin Luther King. We have a relationship to history through the more modern media, the movies and the television and stuff like that, so we can actually see people and hear them communicate. And I do know, though, that because of our own taste and our own intention, we have decided that there is this class of people who we should listen to and who are the ones who make sense. And as I listen to them, they don't make sense. They don't make any sense at all. And you might find, you might not, but you might find that in Kamala Harris, for instance, and again, that's not somebody that I know, but in her communication, she's appalling. She is just appalling. And you might find that an essential part of Donald Trump's ghoulish appeal is that you do know what he's talking about. It doesn't matter that he's lying. They're all lying because we all lie, especially when we're trying to persuade people. We use we use the population's weaknesses terribly in communicating. It's very, very cynical, which is another point that Socrates might have addressed were he with us. So that's what I've encountered is that the people who make up the community, that not all of them, obviously, there are plenty of very articulate and very warm people, that chap Whitehouse, Sheldon Whitehouse, but when they start talking about certain kinds of things, you suddenly go, look, I have the training to understand them. And when I hear what they say, I often wondered, were they trying to convince me, or are they trying to convince me that that was a good speech that would persuade the stupid among us? I mean, watching these recent campaign speeches, I'm sorry, they're appalling. They are. So the only way, the stuff that Michelle Obama said, she's such a, she's a very pleasant and pleasing and obviously articulate, intelligent person, but she's been talking some real hooey. And so I'm not sure, because of because of how we operate at the moment, I'm not sure whether people are literally standing there and applauding and being so thrilled by what she's saying because they're feeling that, or because they're thinking that's very effective. When Netanyahu made his speech to Congress, it basically came down to, don't make no mistake, they are evil. He just said it over and over again. And the all-white jury agreed. Everybody got up and clapped and applauded and had orgasms, apparently. There, in no world, no point in history could that ever be thought of as a good speech. It was bovine. And particularly in Britain, for some reason, people were running around saying that this was a lesson in rhetoric. I have no idea what that would mean. It was like if you do enough plays, you have characters who, especially in Shakespeare, who go off the deep end. That's what they do. And they babble for 5 minutes. And that's all he did. Extraordinary. Now, if you agree with him that Israel and the United States and Western Europe are absolutely civilization and they are evil, then you could say, oh, no, he made a great speech that I agree with, or I like the way he said the stupid things that I agree with. But to mistake it for a great speech, I mean, read Pericles' funeral oration, please. Read John Kennedy's first inauguration. Read any of the Lincoln ones for great stuff. Still manipulative, and often saying very, very little that's useful. But anyway, that's my thing. Populism is democracy. And there is no, in terms of the myth that the lower orders are depraved and immoral because they're poor. We need to stop that. I mean, lots of liberals will say, well, the reason that there's crime in poor communities is because they're poor. And I go, well, one of the truths about the poor communities around the world is that they're infinitely less criminal than affluent communities that we have in America. And I mean sordid crime. So that's what democracy meant to me, and it's not just a political system, it's actually a way of encountering every human being and every dog that I meet, that I do encounter. There's so many stories of engaging with and hearing the people that we have been taught to disdain and ignore and not attend to. There's many reasons that I like Ta-Nehisi quotes. I don't know why it's always Ta-Nehisi quotes. Ta-Nehisi. Maybe that's the way he says it. But one of the things I love about listening to him is that his language is very clear. There's no artifice or vanity in it. Anyway, I need to stop.